Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakaacharya Stotra His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki, प्रेम से कहो जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की, गंगा माई यमुना माई की, भक्तिदेव तुलसी महारानी की, श्री वृंदावन धाम की, श्री जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. So today we are reading from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 15. I need all of your blessings so that I can do some seva. Hare Krishna. Namam duskriti no mudha. Oh yes.
I can get it.
Okay.
Okay. We are best willing to. Then you can now join. What is the chapter? Now say it again.
Chapter 7, text 15. Namam duskriti no mudha prapadyante naradamaha mayaya parhata jnana asuram bhavam ashritaha. Namam duskriti no mudha prapadyante naradamaha mayaya prahata jnana asuram bhavam ashritaha. Namam duskriti no mudha prapadyante naradamaha mayaya prahata jnana asuram bhavam ashritaha. Would anyone would like to recite? Namam duskriti no mudha prapadyante naradamaha mayaya prahita jnana ashrutam bhavam ashritaha. Anyone else? Namam duskriti no mudha prapadyante naradamaha maya prahata jnana asuram bhavam ashritaha. Anyone else? Alright, we'll go to the word-to-word meanings. Na, not mam, unto me, duskritina, miscreants, mudaha, foolish, prapadyante, surrender, nara adamaha, lowest among mankind, mayaya, by illusionary energy, aprahita, stolen, jnanaha, whose knowledge, asuram, demonic, bhavam, nature, ashritaha, accepting. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. Purport. It is said in Bhagavad Gita that by simply surrendering oneself onto the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality Krishna, one can surmount the stringent laws of material nature. At this point, a question arises. How is it that educated philosophers, scientists, businessmen, administrators, and all the leaders of ordinary people do not surrender to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, the all-powerful personality of Godhead? Mukti, or liberation from the laws of material nature, is sought by leaders of mankind in different ways and with great plans and perseverance for a great many years and births. But if that liberation is possible simply by surrendering onto the lotus feet of Supreme Personality of Godhead, then why don't these intelligent and hard-working leaders adopt this simple method? The Gita answers this question very frankly. Those who are learned leaders of this society like Brahma, Shiva, Kapila, the Kumaras, Manu, Vyasa, Devala, Asita, Janaka, Prahalada, Bali, and later on Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, Sri Chaitanya, and many others who are faithful philosophers, politicians, educators, scientists, etc., surrender onto the lotus feet of the Supreme Person, the all-powerful authority. Those who are not actually philosophers, scientists, educators, administrators, etc., but who pose themselves as such for material gain, do not accept the plan or the path of the Supreme Lord. They have no idea of God. They simply manufacture their own worldly plans and consequently complicate the problems of material existence in their vain attempts to solve them. Because the material energy, nature, is so powerful, it can resist the unauthorized plans of the atheists and baffle the knowledge of the planning commissions. The atheistic plan makers are described herein by the words duskritinaha, or miscreants. Kriti means one who has performed meritorious work. The atheistic plan maker is sometimes very intelligent and meritorious also, because any gigantic plan, good or bad, must take intelligence to execute. But because the atheistic brain is improperly utilized in opposing the plan of the Supreme Lord, the atheistic plan maker is called Duskriti, which indicates that his intelligence and efforts are misdirected. In the Gita, it is clearly mentioned that the material energy works fully under the direction of the Supreme Lord. It has no independent authority. It works as the shadow moves, in accordance with the movement of the object. But still, the material energy is very powerful, and the atheist, who, due to his godless temperament, cannot know how it works, nor can he know the plan of the Supreme Lord. Under the illusion and the modes of passion and ignorance, all his plans are baffled, as in the case of Hiranyakashipu and Ravana, whose plans were smashed to dust, although they were both materially learned as scientists, philosophers, administrators, and educators. These duskritinas, or miscreants, are of four different patterns as outlined below. First are the mudas, who are those grossly foolish, like hard-working beasts of burden. They want to enjoy the fruits of their labor by themselves and so do not want to part with them for the Supreme. The typical example of the beast of burden is the ass. This humble beast is made to work very hard by his master. The ass does not really know for whom he works so hard day and night. He remains satisfied by filling his stomach with a bundle of grass, sleeping for a while under the fear of being beaten by his master, and satisfying his sex appetite at the risk of being repeatedly kicked by the opposing party. The ass sings poetry and the philosophers sometimes, but this braying sound only disturbs others. This is the position of the foolish, fruitive worker who does not know for whom he should work. He does not know that karma, action, is meant for yajna, sacrifice. Most often, those who work very hard day and night to clear the burden of self-created duties say that they have no time to hear of the immortality of the living being. To such mudas, material gains, which are destructible, are lives all in all, despite the fact that the mudas enjoy only a very small fraction of the fruit of labor. Sometimes they spend sleepless days and nights in fruitive gain, and although they may have ulcers or indigestion, they are satisfied practically with no food. They are simply absorbed in working hard day and night for the benefit of illusory masters. Ignorant of their real master, the foolish workers waste their valuable time serving mammon. Unfortunately, they never surrender to the Supreme Master of all masters, nor do they take time to hear of them from proper sources. The swine who eat the night soil do not care to accept the sweetmeats made of sugar and ghee. Similarly, the foolish worker will untiringly continue to hear of sense-enjoyable tidings for the flickering mundane world. But they will have very little time to hear about the eternal living force that moves the material world. So we'll discuss until this point because this is a very long purport. First we'll do the prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So welcome everyone to the Saturday Satsang program. We also have a Kirtan before this talk led by Prabhu here, so please come for that as well. So currently we are reading this verse 7:15, and also I'll also briefly touch upon the previous verse as well, because that verse and that verse are closely related. It says Daivi hiesha gunamai mama maya dhuratyaya mam eva hi prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. This divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So until this point, which I read in the purport, right, Srila Prabhupada was touching upon many points. The first point he brings about was he discusses about is about leadership and leaders. If all of us are aware of the current nature of the world, right? We know that most leaders are after power, and you have mostly, if you broadly categorize, we have these leaders who are either big corporates or government entities who are just their only desire is to control or gain as much as power, right? So they have wrong notions of life. Why? Because they are not in tune with the true wisdom which is described in books like the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. They only believe in the concept of the survival of the fittest. They think that the material world which they feel and they touch and they see is all in all, and their only purpose is to gain control of that material nature, right? But here Krishna is mentioning in the previous text 14, that this material nature is actually controlled by him, right? By Krishna. So, and he also mentions the way to overcome them. The way to overcome them is to serve Krishna and understand how to serve him and how to follow his plan, right? But instead, you have these leaders who are under wrong notions, or they are in illusion. So they come up with their own realities, but they have some inclination or some tendency to help others, but because they don't have the proper knowledge, right? They themselves are in the wrong path, and unfortunately the people who are trying to follow them, even they are also led into this path, right? For example, right, we have this many, as a result there are many problems which are faced, which are present in the current society. One such example is the country called Syria, right? In 2011, Syria was under a dictator or an authoritarian ruler until then, but then some protests have broken out, and then all other nations, right, they wanted to take advantage of this situation, right? So then they supplied weapons to different factions in their society, and each country had their own selfish interest or agenda to gain control of that territory, directly or indirectly. So these so-called leaders of these different nations, right, they only wanted to take advantage of that situation for satisfying their own selfish desire to gain more power, right? As a result, the problem got even further deteriorated, and more than I think in millions, right, all of the people started leaving their homes and moving to other countries, living as refugees. The children were suffering. All of them are suffering. So the problem got even more magnified, right? So the current leaders are only interested in racking up their defense resources or ownership of natural resources, or improving their wealth and economy. So they also, the so-called well-developed nations, they think that their leaders think that these are the important aspects over which they want control, right? So they have institutions in place so that people can be trained, so that they get skills in these particular areas, and they can serve the country to satisfy the desires of these leaders. All right. So you have now, there's an entire ecosystem, right? The ecosystem, organization, everything is good, but the key point which is they are missing is they are missing this point that there is a unifying spirit soul, which all of us are intimately connected with each other and with God, right? So they don't have this particular principle, and as a result, they think that they are helping others by their own speculations. So they make others work hard. They make their citizens work hard and forget what is the true purpose of human life, right? You have CEOs of big corporations or professors, right? They come up with new technologies, right? So these new technologies are there to boost defense or the economic purposes of these desires of these big leaders, right? So the common man sees all around only being bombarded with the saying that success in his life means to contribute to the interests or these wrong interests of these leaders, right? And as we see, this leads to many problems, even in the society as well. The people are unsatisfied. Yeah, because Bhagavad Gita clearly explains that unless we serve God and serve people to realize their divine nature and how to serve God, right, there won't be any satisfaction among people, right? So if that key point is missing, then the society degrades because the people are left unsatisfied. Right? The book Bhagavad Gita also clearly explains in the verse in chapter 5, right? It gives the different characteristics of a true leader. It says, there's a verse which says, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini Stunichaiva Swapaka Pandita Samadarshina. Right? So it defines what is true knowledge and what the leader who possesses this knowledge thinks. How does he think? What is his vision? Right? So a true leader, he sees everyone on an equal level because all of us are spirit souls, all endowed with different abilities and different resources. Right? So a true leader would try to engage people in whatever abilities they have in a way that would gradually help them to progress towards self-realization and God realization, right? And whatever is needed to achieve that, right? In both in terms of material and spiritual requirements, this particular leader would arrange some systems and have some organizations in place so that people would be encouraged to follow this, right? Right now, because we don't see that, we don't have such kind of leaders who are driven by this higher knowledge, right? What happens is that leaders, although in the beginning, right, some of them may have good intentions, right? If you honestly speak to them, right, if you speak to any big leader, right, he would come up saying that he had good intentions, but then to just be in position or to just maintain his position, he has to do so many compromises, and he doesn't have the clarity on what to compromise on and what not to compromise on. So because he's not driven by a higher source of knowledge, he gets confused and he himself loses the track unknowingly, and as a result the citizens who are under him, they also suffer, right? But Whereas if you see, right, even from history, even if any of the leaders were even trying their bit to gain this knowledge and then set up systems, right? We could see that even from history, right? You had Alexander, for example. Alexander's teacher was I forget his name. Does anyone know? Yeah, Alexander the Great. Do you know who is his teacher? Ptolemy? Socrates or Ptolemy? Yeah, so Socrates, all of them were like very intelligent scholars and learned people, right? So although Alexander is not 100% good in his character, at least he had some good traits, right? And all of them were taught by this teacher, right? Even in India, we had a king called Chandragupta Maurya, and he had a very learned teacher. His name was Chanakya, right? And Chanakya was he was a qualified Brahmana. He knew the Shastra well, and with his guidance, Chandragupta Maurya until today remained to be a very popular ruler of India. Right, but sometimes people get confused. Okay, but if you see the recent history, right, people may argue that many wars have been started on the basis of religion, right? So they would argue saying that, why do you think religion is important? In fact, religion has brought about more division among people. Again, we could easily counter it back by saying that that leader has to be trained properly to not come under his own shortcomings, right? If you are more egoistic and if you think your way is the only way, right, and out of ego, so instead of applying the scripture to elevate, right, you are just pushing your ego and you are crushing anyone else who is coming or who is slightly different than what you are thinking, right? So that is actually a shortcoming, but we cannot blame that with spiritual knowledge or God, right? Yeah, does anyone have any comments or anything?
Is there a way we can teach these leaders of modern day about the Gita and concepts of Gita so that they can do good to the world instead of bringing fights and wars?
Yeah, I mean, that was in fact the mission of Srila Prabhupada as well. He wanted important leaders to be trained, right? So that's why he wanted all of the leaders of this movement to actively engage with the existing leaders and share this knowledge and see if they are eager to learn and see if they are interested. Yeah. So then we'll continue with the purport. So we are in the different types of miscreants, right? So number 2 is the other class of duskriti or miscreants is called Naradhama, or the lowest of mankind. Nara means human being and Adhama means the lowest. Out of the 8.4 million different species of living beings, there are 400,000 human species. Out of these, there are numerous lower forms of human life that are mostly uncivilized. The civilized human beings are those who have regulative principles of social, political, and religious life. Those who are socially and politically developed but who have no religious principles must be considered Naradhamas. Nor is religion without God. religion, because the purpose of following the religious principles is to know the supreme truth and man's relation with him. In the Gita, the personality of Godhead clearly states that there is no authority above him and he is the supreme truth. This civilized form of human being is meant for man's reviving the lost consciousness of his eternal relation with the supreme truth, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who is all powerful. Whoever loses this chance is classified as Naradhama. We get information from revealed scriptures that when the baby is in the mother's womb, an extremely uncomfortable situation, he prays to God for deliverance and promises to worship him alone as soon as he gets out. To pray to God when he is in difficulty is a natural instinct of every living entity, because he is eternally related with God. But after his deliverance, the child forgets the difficulties of birth and forgets his deliverer also, being influenced by Maya, the illusionary energy. It is the duty of the guardians of children to revive the divine consciousness dormant in them. The 10 processes of reformatory ceremonies as enjoined in the Manusmriti, which is the guide to religious principles, are meant for reviving God consciousness in the system of Varnashrama. However, no process is strictly followed now in any part of the world. Therefore, 99.9% of the population is Naradhama. When the whole population becomes Naradhamas, naturally all their so-called education is made null and void by the all-powerful energy of the physical nature. According to the standard of the Gita, a learned man is one who sees on equal terms the learned Brahmana, the dog, the cow, the elephant, and the dog-eater. This is the vision of a true devotee. Sri Nityananda Prabhu, who is an incarnation of Godhead as a divine master, delivered the typical Naradhamas, the brothers Jagai and Madhai, and showed how the mercy of the real devotee is bestowed upon the lowest of mankind. So the Naradhama, who is condemned by personality of Godhead, can again revive his spiritual consciousness only by the mercy of a devotee. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in propagating the Bhagavata Dharma or activities of the Lord, has recommended the people submissively hear the message of personality of Godhead. The essence of the message is Bhagavad Gita. The lowest among human beings can be delivered by this submissive hearing process only. But unfortunately, they even refuse to give an oral reception to these messages, and what to speak of surrendering to the will of the Supreme Lord. Naradhamas, or the lowest of mankind, willfully neglect the prime duty of human being. Third, the next class of Duskriti is called Mayaya Prita Jnana, or those persons whose erudite knowledge has been nullified by the influence of illusory material nature, energy. They are mostly very learned fellows, great philosophers, poets, literati, scientists, etc. But the illusionary energy misguides them, and therefore they disobey the Supreme Lord. There are a great number of Maya Pratak Jnana at the present moment, even among the scholars of Bhagavad Gita. In the Gita, in plain and simple language, it is stated that Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is none equal to or greater than him. He is mentioned as the father of Brahma, the original father of all human beings. In fact, Sri Krishna is said to be not only the father of Brahma, but also the father of the species of life. He is the root of the impersonal Brahman and Paramatma, the super soul in every living entity in his plenary portion. He is the fountainhead of everything, and everyone is advised to surrender unto his lotus feet. Despite all these clear statements, the Maya Pratagyana deride the personality of the Supreme Lord and consider him merely another human being. They do not know that the blessed form of the human life is designed after the eternal and transcendental feature of the Supreme Lord. All unauthorized interpretations of Gita by a class of Maya Pratagyana outside the purview of the Parampara system are so many stumbling blocks on the path of spiritual understanding. The deluded interpreters do not surrender onto the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, nor do they teach others to follow this principle. Fourth, the last class of this Kriti, called Ashuram Bhavam Ashritaha, or those of demonic principles. This class is openly atheistic. Some of them argue that the Supreme Lord can never descend to this material world, but they are unable to give any tangible reasons as to why not. There are those who make him subordinate to the impersonal feature, although the opposite is declared in the Gita. Envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the atheist will present a number of illicit incarnations manufactured in the factory of his brain. Such persons whose very principle of life is to decry the personality of Godhead cannot surrender onto the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. Sri Hamunacharya Ala Bandharu of South India said, "O my Lord, you are unknowable to persons involved with atheistic principles. Despite your uncommon qualities, features and activities, despite your personality being confirmed by all the revealed scriptures in the quality of goodness, and despite your being acknowledged by the famous authorities renowned for their depth of knowledge in transcendental science and situated in godly qualities. Therefore, first, the grossly foolish people, second, the lowest of the mankind, third, the deluded spectators, and fourth, the professed atheist, as above mentioned, never surrender on to the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, in spite of all scriptural and authoritative advice." Right. The whole point, how I can understand, is that people are deluded with an impression that they know everything, and they have no tendency of seeking knowledge from people who are experts. So I guess their ego overtakes them in spite of their small desire to serve others, and they lead a misguided life and also guide others to the wrong path. Yeah, Hare Krishna. Any more comments or suggestions before we close up?
Thank you very much.
Question.
Yes, yes.
So you said that there are 400,000 human species.
Right.
Like, what does that mean? They don't like men and women.
Right. So here, right, there is also categorization based on consciousness. Even among humans, right, you have many classifications. Some are very civilized, meaning they respect each other, they respect nature, and they deal according to the knowledge. So, and there are so many other grades of consciousness that lead to different classification.
I'm just curious, like, where did that number come from? Is it like mentioned in Gita or like Vedas, or like is it just an occupation from
So this must surely have some scriptural backup. Right now I'm not actually aware, but I can get back to this. Yeah.
Because it's very interesting, how can but there is probably, but like.
You know that there are 8.4 million yonis, but how can we say that 400 of them are human species? Maybe 4, 5, some are like gorillas, they can be categorized into human species. Gorillas, chimpanzees, things like that. They are more like human. Like.
I think I got my answer, yeah.
But
out of all that species, like we get 400,000 all human species, like at that time, and that's our chance to like attain moksha by like praying to God.
Yeah, I can get more clarity on that. Yeah, I'm not aware.
We appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.